Blessings and welcome forward to Reasonings right here at the Tree of Life. I'm your host, Talaku, the Great Owl, in the presence of my co-host, Brother Ramon Singh. Perfect love. Perfect love. So we've been doing a particular series on works of the flesh, because we did works of the spirit, which we examined, all of the fruits of the spirit. And so now we are examining the works of the flesh, because we realize that the kingdom of darkness exists within the carnal desires. That's where their strength comes from. Those that are born of flesh is flesh. Satisfying carnal are what we call transient in transience, things that won't last. And the kingdom of light in righteousness has principles that are everlasting. Put it on next way. Good principles creating good results, born of spirit, spirit. Bad principles creating bad results, low desires in Malchut, not of Keta, bringing forward vainness. And one of the vain outcomes of bad principles is called variance. And I think it's a strange title that I saw within this. And it wouldn't make sense unless we understand that there is a procreation module. And the procreation module sets laws of being, gender being a law of opposites. Sorry. Gender being a law of opposites, and everything having opposites to create equanimity. Right? Male and female, good and evil, right and wrong, truth and lies, yesterday and today, yeah? Things like these. Duality that creates a singular outcome. But because there's a set procreation module, then we can infer by biblical standards, not just of psychology, which variance is an assessment module through sample variance or some kind of deviation module on how to sequentially assess differences in movements, in groups, in calculations, right? Or inconsistent variable that is haphazard, happens without any kind of sequential origin, that it can be charted or mapped. And these things have to do with probability and maybe the chaos theory module. All things about possibilities and divergences, even in terms of behavior, of which I'm basing my argument on, not on the observer status based in a scientific analysis called variance. But variance in an understanding of the procreation module, behavioral science, psychology, but also religious oratory and religious ordinances. I have to establish it. And also the Mazarath. So let's look at religious ordinances and under the procreation module, as well as the genetic module, male and female, right? So variance would suggest that any deviation from a procreation module, which is a standard established module of actuality, would be a variation. A deviation from the establishment. So look at it in behavioral principles now and say, well, behaviorally, lifestyles that are incongruent with the procreation model is a variation and is a variance, which would say a homosexual lifestyle would be a variance, right, under the procreation module. And hence, let's go behaviorally now. If one is heavily violent, destructive, under the procreation modules and the modules of ethics and morality established through laws of nature, already again under the procreation module, violent behavior is incongruent with the best outcome in human life. So any culture that promotes, let's say, human sacrifice would be a variance against the established order of God. So let's put it in true context now. So the order of God, as we know religiously, would say Christ is the head of man, man is the head of woman. So you say God is the head of Christ, Christ is the head of man, man is the head of woman, Christ and God is the head of the family. And this is the religious context of understanding how the model that is under God operates. If you were to flip the model on its head now, I'm giving as basic understanding as I can. If you were to flip the model on its head and say, woman is the head of man, hey, man is the head of Christ, Christ is the head of God, that would be a variation and a variance to the established law of actuality and causality, cause and effect. God creator, human created. That is the law. You do not flip it and say, "And we are God." "Oh, we are God." "Well, we are God." "Well, how we make this?" You are talk about Rasta. You are talk like a Jesus man. So I am a Yahshua man. You are going, so. You know, so that's how the thing go. And so now we have one more thing before I come to your brother thing. Let's look at now established functionality, rituals, and practice now. So let's just say Sabbath keeping. People challenge me on this intellectually, so it's okay. Sabbath is established under the codification of man's view on God and religion. The Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Let us get that. Alright, good. Let's look at functionalities of rituals. Sabbath was the ancient established point of the congregants of worship, of a sacred day under the Hebrew and now we call Judo-Christian or Judean-Christian creed, right? That Sabbath was a sacred day of worship, and now we have what we call the Sunday law, which would be a variation of the law of the Sabbath established from the ancient times as the sacred day, to what we call the Sunday worshippers, who they say change the day from the Sabbath, which is the seventh day, to the first day of the week. I would call that a variance that is incongruent with the law of God. So I listed as many that I could to define variance in terms of a religious context. Brother Singh.
Yes, brother, great all. One God, variance. Rafi said, this is a word that I'm not used to, But it varying, And when I find out that it means divergent, inconsistent, So me that say this person like with a dodgy. The person was straight up. The person when them a do works, them not consistent. When them a deal with people, them shady. Because enough people in the earth now, them have this divergent, shady personality. Because I guess everybody just live for themselves, Because the most I teach we for love everybody as we love ourselves. Love with neighbors, you see me? And be consistent in the works and behaviors. Today you're happy and cheerful. Tomorrow you come with vexed energy. Inconsistent. So it's a different way for pre things,
It's like a flip-flopper. As you brought it from the assessment to the individual context. It's a flip-flopper. It's a person who is what you call a double-minded person, who goes against established norm, functions, and practices, very opinionated, and is in some sense incontinent in certain regard to, because they're very self-aggressive, self-orienting, and very stubborn. And stubborn to resist established norm. And normative isn't always about just because people are forced to believe. Norms are created as what we call mannerisms, precludes human interaction. It's just mannerisms. So if you're gonna heal someone, this would be more respected as a sign of saying hi. This would be more say, get the heck out of here, right? So there's norms, normative behavior, and a person who refuses to acknowledge what we call common decency and morality. So they come around you and they begin to talk about obscene sexual acts and behaviors, right? While everyone in your presence, not that we're not aware of what sex is and its divergence, but in this moment, you are a variance to the gathering that is gathered amongst harmony, towards a healing, towards a specific outcome that needs concentrated effort, and that is a distraction. You know that kind of person is, Brother Singh? The only person will love try to stick out, try to stand out like a sore thumb. That's another variance. It's like they must be seen, they must be heard. Right now, everybody's gathering towards silence and harmonizing towards the outcome, and they are out there. She's making a, an attention grabber of herself. She wants everybody to know that she's got the beats ear in and the beats boombox, and she's got the latest everything. He just wants everybody to know that he got money in his pocket. But why we are gathered is towards going to help those who are less fortunate. That's a variance. And that variance as a behavior means that people will always try to disrupt things and be inconsistent and not trustworthy or dependable. Because today they came amongst you for a hype, for what they could gain, and then tomorrow recognizing that it takes effort and consistency, as it says. Not having that intent of consistency, they flip-flop. They negate the duties that they agreed to. They forget to gather at the appropriate time in the context and the situations that demand their attention. They avoid. Flip-flop. This variance in behavior is literally showing an inconsistency and a double-mindedness, which means that ultimately a person will be torn between multiple points of interest, and so a person cannot really be considered to be well-adjusted or having things appropriately together. As a person like that wouldn't inspire confidence in any sense. And then we do know that we're humans, we have to organize to get things done. I mean, a person can talk many things, but you still got to go to work. You still got to go to work. So that means that there's a mission statement on the wall of most established businesses, whether it be in the social, the service industry, governmental, administrative, in the corporate. There is a mission statement. That mission statement, or a policy, operation, modus operandi, that suggests that together, this cohort of working class individuals employed here adhere to these standards. But there are people who are consistently going against the standards. They are lawbreakers, man. They don't like the law. They don't like to follow orders or follow protocol, right? So they're not breaking the law because they're unaware of its importance or of its dictates. They're breaking the law simply because they don't care. They consider themselves unique. So then there's another word I would say under that behaviorally in terms of, let's look at sexual behavior in terms of all these pronouns, right? There's a delusional mindset that comes from these variances in actuality, in behavioral psychology. There is a lot of delusions because a person has these thoughts that they are willing to alter the native. And what do I mean? To do gender augmentation surgery. So we could not be looking at variance and not talking about willful mutation. Sorry. Willful mutilation. I said it because, hallelujah, it is mutilation. To cut your genitals, it is mutilation. I'm going to say it because it is. And so these variances becoming normalized, regularized behaviorally, goes against the procreation model, go against the standard model of morality. But these subtexts, these variables of which the Matrix talks about, has all of a sudden become the new argument of what? Individuality. She's an individual is an Individual. He's so weird. She's so cool. She's so weird. Individual. No one has a normative, consistent, standard functionality that civilization is built on. The genetic structures are built on. Males being males, females being females, right? A truly assertive and well-worked decision, inconsistency create a solid outcome. Inconsistent, haphazard results creates inconsistent, haphazard outcomes, meaning things won't last. Fleeting is another word we use. So variations, that's another part of variance, leads to what? Multiple outcomes that depreciates the original intent. So in the scientific model, it's a distribution system, and also how things are either gained, lost over huge population. Let's look at a variance in a scientific model. Let's just say 1 in 5 individual acts psychotic. The variance model of observation says 1 in 5 act psychotic. How much people within the cohort group has been assessed? How much people makes up the entire mass of the population from which that cohort is taken from? So let's just say 1 in 5 is psychotic, but the population is 500,000. So 1 in 5 in a variance model suggests that 100,000 people will carry a psychotic behavioral trait. One might tend to high trait narcissism, disagreeableness, might lead on to violent outcomes and tendency. And so that is a variance model as it relates to a scientific analysis, just a miniature one, right? So people can understand what a variance really is, right? So let's just say out of that 1 in 5, 1 in 5 is violent, is proven to be violent, which would be a genetic predisposition, they would call that. Then that would be what? How much would that be? If it's 1 in 5, and 1 in 5 of 500,000 is 100,000. So 1 in 5 is how much? Most likely, out of that 100,000, 2,000 people has that tendency to be violent. Because from the 1 in 5 module, we get the 100,000. And 1 in 5 out of that 100,000, you know? Yes, brother Singh. Okay, yeah. So slight correction. So like I was saying, so if 1 in 5 of the 100,000 is proven to be violent, that means that 20,000 individuals, you understand, will be expressing violent outcomes and be caught up in violent acts, right? And if it's 1 in 5 in that 20,000 is proven to be a serial killer, it will mean that 4,000 individuals would turn out to be serial killers. So why am I doing that? So you understand what variance means. It means that there is always a tiny group of individuals, behaviors, and attitudes which go counter to the normative, to the accepted congenial function, right? So there's always going to be a grouping. These individuals are called like subtext. They are not the main subject. So that means that that behavior is codified usually through some dysfunction psychologically. And because of that, it means that it is not promoted. That's what I'm trying to say. So a variation or a variance of behaviors and such is not one that is promoted generally, I should say, as a good, desirable engagement. It's usually not. So why people have variation models is to test the probability of problems occurring when they begin to scale things up, when they begin to scale things down. They want to see what would happen if they take this to 300,000 people, to 2 million people. So by nature, not everybody will agree because people have different beliefs, but the laws of a nation is established around the agreed and accepted functions of each living being. And so when a person goes against that in any context, it is never appreciated, right? Although I do know some people say, well, people who were subjugated were considered variances to the normative. Well, that is in essence a different argument and maybe bears weight and truth to its own application versus to what we are trying to say, that the normative is a procreation model, it's a God-centered module, right? Which means that we respect nature, we respect creation, we approach life with love, you understand, with temperance, with forgiveness, with kindness. That is what is the normative. And the variance is to be inconsistent, to be self-aggrandizing, self-centered, you understand, to be violent, disruptive, destructive, unkind, uncaring, you know, to be an idolater, to be these things which are counter to that which is understood to be of value. What I was saying.
Yes, brother, great all. Man, all of this remind me of brethren what I know from high school days. And the two of we grew up together and go university, you know, man, and we make plan. Mm-hmm. You know, him a producer, me a the manager. You know? Two tools, him just start do what him want do, anything or anything, you know? Mm-hmm. Switch up plan, all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. Him is the man who always want to go party. And me want like go reason, you know? Go link with virgin, go reason and chill, you know?
Absolutely.
And me is not the party person. So him always a opposite, a oppose and I do what them want to do, you know? And me, from day one, me never like the party vibes, you know? And him know that, you know? And still always a force me. And I say, come, I could go to someone and do this and, you know? Today, he must say, only meat he must eat. Only meat. Tomorrow, I'm a vegetarian. The next day, I'm a breatharian. You see me? He mix up. Today, I'm a talk about the Most High and Christianity. Tomorrow, I'm a talk about Africa and them things there. You know? The man not consistent in a nothing. Any school him go, him never finish it. Him never finish him university, never finish no school. Always never complete. Even the music I used to make. Whole heap of incomplete something. Never complete it. You know? So the whole of that remind me of this youth what me they have to eventually we just there for just love him. Cause him not change.
And you are seeking consistency, but
Yeah,
that's your
man.
nature.
Yeah, man.
You know, it makes sense a lot when you hear people say that they parted ways. Because one was always inconsistent, as you say, was always a flip-flopper, making a lot of about turn. 90-degree change, like what? Like about turn. And you find that usually when a person is well invested in something, meaning isn't established in something, that's when they flip-flop. That's when they go from one extreme to another, from left hemisphere to right hemisphere. First they were thinking very logical about something, and then they start thinking very creative and maybe a little illogical. But what life suggests is that while I was doing the variance model in terms of economic model, I showed one aspect as to how it's applicable. The next aspect is how your fashion understanding. Because when people are constantly doing things without completion, it says in them that they are impatient. So you see, that is what I think that it is showing you. I assess it psychologically that there's an impatience. There is a group of people who will not stay calm long enough to process things. And that is why in the military, we couldn't allow a certain type of person, and we are able to identify them because they have a below 85 IQ, right? So people are able to easily be identified that they are not committant, they are non-committant, right? And that is why the variation models are important. So when you already work out that the people who have this high psychological predisposition, they act this way. So behaviorally, you realize that they came to you and you told them to be here tomorrow at 3. And for no reason other than their own lack of consistency, tardiness, they're not there. They're not there because something affected them. They're not there because a great, colossal, negative happened in their life. They're not there because they could not understand or regard the seriousness, the depth of importance of your statement. When you said, tomorrow at 3, we agree we will address this. Because they are not consistent in applying themselves to anything. And if this is an individual that you want to put in charge of infrastructure, of key functions of your government or of your society, you'll be putting yourself, hallelujah, at great risk. So behaviorally, you're able to see these things scientifically, modularly, measure it, quantify it, to know that when these individuals show up, you do not employ them in these key positions, or if you employ them, they are called the low motivation people that needs high level of motivation. So you gotta be on their back like a slave driver, we say in Jamaica. I don't know what they say in America, maybe a master or whatever, but we say like a slave driver out here, right? To get something consistent out of them, because they do not work well without authority. That's probably what Americans say, right? You need an overseer. And so that is why the variance modules are important. So if you see people that we all got together, we all made up our minds about something, and tomorrow they were just supposed to bring the butter. I'm just saying it, I'm so top of my head. They're just supposed to bring the butter. Nobody asked them to bring anything else. We didn't ask them to bring bread. We didn't ask them to bring luncheon meat. We didn't ask them to bring the vegans. We didn't ask them to do nothing else but bring butter. And they couldn't bring the butter. And then the next day, when you asked them to bring the cherry juice, they brought butter. You should pay attention to that. You asked them to buy the 100% proof, and they bought 50 proof. Yeah, pre them. There's something there where they're not understanding what consistency is, or what an exacting situation, statement, and purpose is about. They flip-flop. Today they tell you that they'll go to the end of the earth for you. This is in Love and Affairs now. Today they tell you they'll go to the end of the earth for you. And then tomorrow they tell you they don't want to see you, right? You're the worst person on earth. And next week they're making plans to move somebody else into the house that you both live, right? And then 2 months after that they say they made a very big mistake. Oh my God, Sharon, how could I do that to you? You're the only girl that ever cared for me. Brother, see.
Yeah, brother, I agree at all. One, because that I teach we say, if you do the right thing now, is to be consistent. You know, always on time, on point, true to your word, keep your promises and your words true. You know, stay focused in life, focused in thought, focused in dealings with each other. You know, and just do the right thing.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Focus on being consistent in your application, respecting the times, the application of those things you agreed to, respecting the dynamics of your work environment, your family environment, your communal environment, respecting that there's a structure and a standard, and adjusting yourself to these standards is not you changing, but you going into the optimum functionality from Keter to Malhut, from the crown of your head to the sole of your feet, to function within the natural circadian of this plane, of this existence, and not to go up and down, and you will not have the kind of outcomes that we want. And we desire to have a consistency in love and peace. No true soul wants to be disrupted today, at peace tomorrow, disrupted the next minute, at peace the next minute. We want a consistency. If you're feeling good, you want it to continue, right? If you're on a roll, as we say, you want to keep on a roll. That means that things go on to a constancy of sameness, from origin to full manifestation. And so until next time, Let's continue on your path of consistency. Remember that you're a beautiful gift to yourself, to your environment, and to those who you encounter, and to those who encounter you. So continue to be that beautiful gift in consistency, constantly being true to yourself and others. Remember to like, share the True Life Experience right here on Seala Media. Remember to support the Patreon, just to give strength to our ministry business, to keep the videos going. Like, share, subscribe, to keep the algorithms going, so that we can keep our viewing and our subscription up and be able to be of greater benefit, so you know when the videos are coming through. Support the Wizio/Mini Therapy Eating Sessions with yours truly. Give thanks to those who are supporting, and continue to support all the channels under the Seala Media Share Life Network, which is quite a few channels. Love, light, and blessings right here. I've been the great old Talaku, just means the great one, or the strong one, Ethiopian, in the presence of my indomitable co-host, Brother Ramon Singh. Perfect love. Perfect love.